It's time to get some broken bones, skinned knees, and a tire iron to the face as I talk about Road Rash 64. But first I'm going to talk about Nintendo 64 emulation. Let's get started. Thanks for listening. I've decided to skip the usual opening in favor of a kind of State of the Union for N64 emulation. Some podcasts and YouTube personalities say emulation is a dirty word while others embrace it. Me, I'm actually in the middle. While I do love playing on original hardware, I realize that as an adult, I don't have a ton of disposable income or disposable time. Emulation is cheap and very portable compared to the original console, and that's true for just about anything you're going to emulate. Well, except for mobile devices like the Game Boy, but then again, you have to buy all the games, lug the Game Boy around, plus you'll need headphones if you want to hear the game and not disturb anyone else in public. But that actually is true for just about anything you're going to be playing portably, really. On the flip side, there's nothing like putting the real controller in your hands, putting the game in the system, and turning it on. I won't get into the legalities on this, as this show would go on forever. So if I ever win the lottery, you bet I'm going to own and play all the games and have several backup consoles. But since I don't mind emulation at all. I think the most important argument for pro emulation is software preservation, folks. Entropy is going to take our systems down someday. And as long as we can keep them in digital format and keep working on emulation, these old games will be around as long as we want them to be. So I'm going to break this up into different sections. The first being emulation itself. For instance, what have I personally tried to emulate the N64 on? Then I'm going to talk about control, what controllers do I use, and what do I recommend? And then I'll share other options that I have not tried myself, but I have put some research into it. I also asked people on Twitter and Facebook and got some feedback, so I'll be reading those off here as well. I think this will be an engaging topic that we'll come back to from time to time. So I'll go ahead and start. What have I emulated or tried to emulate the N64 on personally? Well, actually, I have a long history of trying to emulate the N64. It all started when I was in high school. There was a kid that I knew. The word frenemy defines his and my relationship perfectly. He was telling me about emulating Mario 64 on his computer, and I said, wow, I want to try that. Then he said I needed some special kind of video card. It was a Voodoo series video card. You remember those? It was special as I couldn't afford one. Anyways, by the way, a side note, if you look up the Voodoo 5 5500 box, and there's a picture of a guy made out of flames, I always thought he looked exactly like Sam Neill. It's like they ripped it from Event Horizon or something. But yeah, anyways, I digress. So the kid, I'll call him Tech Hipster here, said I needed it. Well, I figured my little 400 megahertz Celeron powered gateway tower at home could do it, so why not try? When I got home after school, I remembered looking into Nintendo 64 emulation. I think he was using Ultra HLE or something like that, and it needed the Voodoo it needed the Voodoo to run the glide driver. I'm speaking purely from memory, but those were the buzzwords being thrown around those were the buzzwords being thrown around by Tech Hipster. I then discovered that Project 64, and I downloaded it on my 56K dial-up connection. And then I downloaded Mario 64. It took a while, so I fired up Project 64, told it to load the ROM, and it worked to my surprise. It wasn't playable as it ran very, very slow. But it was enough to make me happy. I remember putting it in wireframe mode, and it ran at an almost playable frame rate. So the next day at school, I told Tech Hipster about it, and he just looked at me like, what? I think he ended up using it since then. So needless to say, I'm a Project 64 fan. It, to me, is the best running and most worked on of the emulators to date that is easy to use with a GUI. It's not perfect, but it works for the majority of the game library. Now, I've ran Project 64 on my main desktop, a Core 2 quad, and it works fine. Like I said, I don't have a super high-end computer. I just don't want one. I've ran it on an old laptop that I use, and that's a Core 2 Duo, and it works great on that as well. Recently, I purchased an Intel Compute Stick, the $39 version that has 1 gig of RAM, 8 gigs of storage. It has a quad-core Atom processor and comes with Ubuntu. Through some careful planning and some luck, I have it running Windows 10. And yes, Windows 10 works with 1 gig of RAM on this little system, and it works decently too. Anyway, I loaded up Project 64 on there, and it works great. Heck, I even played Dave Defeat Source on the Compute Stick for over half an hour, and it ran fine. I mean, the thing was very hot, but it ran fine. I know I've talked a lot about Project 64, so here's the downside. They did have some shady stuff with the installer a while back, and it begs you to register when you buy it, but there's ways around that I won't get into here. There's also Mupen 64 Plus. It doesn't have a GUI, and so it's a little less user-friendly. I've gotten it to run, and it runs actually very well. But I spend all day fixing other people's PC issues and networking stuff that I just want something that's plug and play. And for me, Project 64 is that device for me. I'm sure there's a lot of other things. Maybe somebody will mention like Mednafin or some other, like the emulators that use the cores on the Pis. That's all well and good. But, I just on my PC, that's what I prefer to run is Project 64. Now, my cell phone, it's a different story. I have a Galaxy S7 Edge, and it doesn't run the game so well. I'm sure it might run some fine, but I tried Body Harvest, for instance, and it's very sluggish. I even tried on my wife's S8. On a cheaper tablet I have, it doesn't run well either. I've tried multiple emulators on my phone, but once again, the best performance I can get with the Android version of Project 64, which there are a ton of N64 emulators. It seems like most of them are just rehashes of other people's work, like somebody's taken the source code and just compiled it differently. Just a guess. I'm not 100% sure on that. On a side note, the 3DO emulator runs really fine on my phone, so I usually end up playing those kind of games more on there. I also have a Raspberry Pi 3 that I have RetroPie on, and I have built my own catered ROM list. An N64 emulation on it is hit or miss. Using the stock build with a small overclock that doesn't void the warranty, games like Mario 64 and Big Mountain 2000 are very playable. But others like GoldenEye are sluggish. I watched ETA Prime on YouTube. It's a great channel if you're into emulation and Raspberry Pis. Anyways, you should definitely check out his channel. Anyway, I watched him showing how to get better performance on the Pi and Pi 3 Plus, but even then, it still dips on GoldenEye to an aggravating level. That's my attempts to run emulation on the Pi. As for controllers, well, right now I use Logitech Rumble controller. I found it at a Goodwill for really cheap. It's modeled after a PlayStation 2 DualShock, and it works great on Project 64. I also found a PlayStation 2 and N64 USB controller converter box for $2.50 at a thrift store. It works great. And so what you do is you use the real N64 controller and you plug it into this box, and then it plugs into USB. And it's if you want to use real N64 controller to emulate games on your computer, it makes it great. And with the other one, it makes 2-player games possible. On my phone and the Intel Compute Stick, I have an iPega Bluetooth controller that works great on Android. Just link it to the phone and map the buttons. On Windows, it shows up as any other controller device, and you just have to map the buttons. You could combine this with a cheap Bluetooth adapter on any computer, and you would have yet another controlling option. I don't like touchscreen controls on the phones. I always have finger drift. That's when your fingers slide away from the virtual control pad or control stick. I use the SNES style controllers on my Raspberry Pi, and some games are actually playable with the D-pad. For instance, Mario 64. What made me think of trying this was the re-release of Mario 64 on the DS. It doesn't have an analog stick, and it was decently playable. Yeah, you're missing some camera control options due to the limited number of buttons, but it works well for the most part. I'd say I'd say it's experimental at best. I've seen it on Amazon that you can get a USB-style N64 controller. The reviews are all over the place. Some say they're amazing, and others say they're not so great. I've never tried them, but I'll guarantee that they aren't built the same quality as original N64 controllers. But that goes without saying, I'd say. Things that I've researched but not tried, well, flashcards. Well, these aren't true emulation, but when am I ever going to get around to mentioning these? Besides, they use ROMs, so it's the best of both worlds. If you're unfamiliar with what a flash card is, it's an N64 cartridge you can order that has an SD card slot on it. You load your ROMs into the SD card and then put that in the flash cartridge. You plug the cartridge into your N64 and power it on. Instead of booting into a game, you're given a menu of ROMs. You simply load them and you're playing that game. There are a couple of options here. The premier and the best one is the EverDrive from KRIKZZ.com. They are built to the best quality standards, and they have up to 3. They're on version 3 right now of the cartridge. I think the third version includes a real-time clock, and that's so you can play the Animal Crossing N64 game that came out in Japan, as it needs the real-time clock to determine the time of day. The other option is the ED64 Plus game save device. It's cheaper, and from some reports I've read, it's a ripoff of the firmware and design from KRIKZZ. It's a little cheaper and can be found on Amazon. It might be a ripoff. I don't know. I'm just letting people know of it as an option. I've seen a few YouTube videos, and it seems to run the games fine. Now, let's get into listener feedback. I asked the following question on Facebook and Twitter. Does anyone have any input on what they honestly think of Nintendo 64 emulation? Is it good? Is it bad? Is emulation a horrible, nasty word? I phrase the question because, once again, some purists think emulation is a horrible thing. Here are the responses I got. On Twitter, SDP said to me that for most mainstream games, it's very good. Some lesser-known titles can have problems, but unless you're a purist or small details bother you a lot, you won't notice for most games. I'd say for most people, it's no problem. And I told him, hey, thanks, I tend to agree with that. Or him or her, I'm not sure, SDP. Anyways, yes, I tend to agree. For me, I'm not a purist. I just want a game, and it makes a great option for me. Now, over on Facebook, I got a couple more comments back. From Johnny Morin, he's been a fan of the show for a while. I think that emulation is great for ROM hacks, since most of them were designed using the enhancements that an emulator can provide and will not work on a flash card. Example, Super Mario Star Road or Zelda's Birthday only work on emulators and will crash on an EverDrive. I've never heard of those, but I'll have to give those a try out. So yeah, thank you, Johnny. And then Kent Campbell fired up here. I don't care for it much, as I haven't had any smooth experiences. EverDrive is about as far as I want to go with ROMs, because the feel of the N64 controller is what I want to experience along with the gameplay. I tell you what, there is actually nothing like it, but you know, if you can get around that, that's fine. But if not, hey, more power to you. Game how you game is what I've always said. So yeah, that's the listener feedback. So thanks for everybody for giving some responses here. And before I go to break, I want to give a shout out to the Nintendo 64 Supergroup on Facebook. I've been a member there for a while, and it's a great group of friendly people talking about N64 games and systems, helping each other out with questions and buying and selling games. You can find them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/N64Supergroup. I've also had the link on the episode section for this episode and in the description on the YouTube version of this show. And by episode section for this episode, I mean on the N64podcast.com website. Alrighty, I'm going to take a break here. And when I get back, it's time to talk some Road Rash here on the N64 podcast. Of course, that is not music from the game. I don't want any copyright strikes, and I really did want to play some 8-bit Sugar Ray. So my history with Road Rash goes back to the Sega Genesis that I owned as a child. Wow, it was so much fun. I remember playing all 3 of them, and to be honest, that was the last I ever played of Road Rash until a couple of years ago when I was watching one of my favorite YouTube shows, GameSack, and they had a special episode that was dedicated to Road Rash. Now, if you've ever seen GameSack, there are a couple of guys that talk about games, and each episode is themed to a topic. I enjoy their content very much, as they cover unconventional things like the MSX, TurboGrafx, the 3DO, and a bunch of other, sometimes obscure consoles. So anyways, I was watching one of their Road Rash episode, and was surprised to learn of all the other Road Rash that I had been missing out on. It was this episode that gave me the idea to purchase a 3DO. And I did, and as the 3DO version of Road Rash got high remarks from them, and well, they were right. It's a great version of the game, a lot of fun to play. Now, they also said Road Rash 3D was really bad. I found it at a Goodwill for $1.99 and bought it. I think it's okay. I mean, it's a fun little racing game. This game, so by far, though, the thing that they got wrong, though, is this game. and that was Road Rash 64. This game is ridiculously fun. Yes, it may be a bland mess, and even with the expansion packs, increased graphics abilities, more on that in just a minute, it still plays really well. It's really smooth, as they do say on there. I went back and rewatched the review just to make sure I didn't, maybe I misremembered it, and they didn't give any reasons why it was bad, just that it sucked, and that it was made by the masters of suck, THQ as they put it. They did say it did run smooth, but you know what? Road Rash 64, which I will be covering here in depth, is to me a really fun game. I laughed a lot while playing this. So Road Rash 64 was developed by Pacific Coast Power and Lights and published by THQ, making this game odd as it wasn't published by EA. Now, Pacific Coast Power and Lights also made Jet Moto 3, Nuclear Strike, WWE Crush Hour, and Destroy All Humans Big Willie Unleashed. They also were founded by Don Traeger and Dennis Harper under the name DT Productions. Now, Don was he has a really long industry career and was the producer of Marble Madness and Jordan vs. Bird, two favorites of mine from the NES days. Dennis also has a long history working in this industry, and he worked on games such as Primal Rage and The Godfather the game. If my voice is sounding weird, it's because I chipped a tooth earlier this week and haven't gotten to the dentist yet, and it's kind of pressing on my tongue, so it kind of hurts to talk a little bit. After 2 years in the business, DT Productions was acquired by THQ and renamed to Pacific Coast. In 2005, they changed their name to Locomotive Games, and then THQ closed the studio in 2008. THQ, of course, you all know, and now they are also closed. Road Rash 64 started life as a port of Road Rash 3D, but quickly became its own thing. It was the first Road Rash on a Nintendo system. The game is heavily combat focused. The game uses the Save Pack, Rumble Pack, and can have up to 4 players. Also, it does not require the expansion pack, but if you do have it installed, you get extra graphics options and options. You can have, I think, like widescreen and high-res mode, but they don't make too many differences. It's kind of a pixel mess, but it's a fun pixel mess. The soundtrack is comprised of songs from Civ, Full on the Mouth, The Mermen, and Sugar Ray. Now, the back of the box here, I actually looked it up here because I had never actually seen. I've seen the front of the box. I've seen the cartridge. It's a special black-looking cartridge. But the back of the box, because I like to cover these. So it says Road Rash 64, 180 mile an hour slap to the face, anyone? Then it says multiplayer modes for up to 4 players, including Deathmatch, Cop Mode, and Tag. Intense pack brawling, including grudges and alliances. New weapons and moves like the dreaded Spoke Jam, which is actually kind of cool. 200 miles of interconnected tracks and environments. Over 25 bikes and characters to choose from. Thrashin' soundtrack featuring Sugar Ray, The Mermen, and more. And it's got a bunch of pictures. Game is rated T for teen, 13 plus for animated violence. I didn't see any blood in the game, but there is a ton of violence. Okay, so now let's get on to the different modes in the game. So the game modes, you have Thrash. Now, Thrash is the exhibition mode of the game. So basically where you pick what you want to, what track you want to race on that you've unlocked in the campaign mode. And then you get to change all the options, like opponent difficulty. You can go from easiest all the way to toughest. So there's like 5 levels of difficulty there. Amount of opponents, you can have a few, some, lot. Amount of cops, few, some, too many. Traffic density, light, normal, heavy. And amount of pedestrians, few, normal, and too many. Now, if you change some of the last sliders there, it will adjust automatically back down the other ones because the N64 probably would lag out rendering all of this. But I like to set up a ton of heavy traffic with a ton of opponents and a ton of pedestrians, or as many as I can of all 3 of those. And just say go for it because it is hilarious watching everyone just slam into cars. Now, there's also multiplayer mode. And multiplayer mode has its own different modes too. There's Thrash mode, which is your typical Thrash mode. That's for 1 to 2 players. And then there is, you can choose between 1 lap, 3 laps, 7 laps. Then there's something called Ped Hunt, which, 1 lap, 3 laps, 7 laps is the same as Thrash mode, except the racetrack can be won in a certain amount of laps. So it's really no different other than laps. Then there's Pedestrian Hunt, where you have to run over pedestrians for points. That's 1 to 2 players. Then there's Deathmatch, And that's where you basically are attacking other players up to 7 points. That's who wins. And then there's tag. The person with the arrow over them is it. And then you have to knock them off to score a point, and then and then another person becomes it. Then there's big game. Big game is the campaign in this. And yeah, the road rashes at this time, if I remember correctly, they all had kind of weird like names for the game modes. So yeah, it's just you have to compete in the races. Now here's the tracks here. So the tracks are divided up into different levels. So the first level has 6 tracks, and there's some of them are really short. They're like 4 kilometers, a little over 4K. So, you know, not too long. It doesn't take you long. That was one of my complaints against the game initially, but they do get longer as you go along. Level 2 has 8 different tracks up to 8K. Level 3 has 8 different tracks up to 9. Level 4 has 8 different tracks up to 12.5 kilometers. And level 5 has tracks up to 8 as well. 8 tracks up to 21K. So, I mean, it's actually quite a long game there. Then there's scooter mode. And so basically you're on a scooter that caps out at 70 miles an hour, and the acceleration's really bad. And that's up to 9 tracks that you can play on there. And then there's also insanity difficulty. I cannot say insanity for some reason this morning. And for that one, you have to purchase the $60,000 bike, and you have to, I think, beat like level 5 to get through it. And that has 8 different tracks on it as well, ranging from 21K down to one called The Wall, which is 2K. So the 2K track, The Wall, is basically you're on an airport runway, and it's a straight race. And so when you cross the finish line, everyone slams into this wall and flips over. It's hilarious. Now, there are also multiplayer tracks. There's Figure 8, Acid Bath, Sewer Scour, Figure 4, and then a dirt track. So yeah, that is the tracks. There are a lot of tracks in this game. And at first I thought there were only like 5 or 6, but then I realized as you unlock the different levels that the game opens up more and it becomes a lot of fun. So there are all kinds of weapon attacks that you can do with different weapons. There's the weapon whack, and so that's basically just attacking with it. There's the weapon jam, and you have to do some special keys. You'll have to look this up, but it's in depth and it's obviously more powerful. You can also kick people, punch people, back fist people, and then you can also spoke people with the, right in their tires, and that'll knock their motorcycle over. So anyways, there's a lot of maneuvers in the game and things you can do. The power-ups that you can pick up. So you'll be racing along the course and you'll see a wrench or a weapon out there or something that says 4x that multiplies your damage by 4, which means you hit someone with a tire iron or your starting weapon. I usually play as the default player, and he looks like JC Denton from Deus Ex. Anyways, so JC's got himself a tire iron, and when you ever hit people with that, it knocks them right over instantly. So the weapons here are, there's also a wrench out there that you can drive through, and that will repair your bike, which is basically your overall life in the game. The life that your player gets, what happens, you'll be racing along, you'll take a hit, and your guy's health will go down. Goes down too far, you'll fall off the bike skids, bike gets damaged. You get back on the bike automatically. The original Road Rash is whenever you fall off the bike, you have to run back to the bicycle or the motorcycle and get back on it. Not with this one. This one, it spawns you right back on the track, just in last place. And so your bike's health goes down, and then your player health is back to full. So this will repair your bike if you run over that wrench. So here's a list of the weapons. There's Spike Club, Tire Iron, Bat, and Billy Club all have the same amount of hit points to them. There's a Pool Cue, which has a great reach. That one's fun to play with. The Sledgehammer, Monkey Wrench, and Banana. They're a little bit more lethal than the last one. And yes, I said banana. It's a giant banana. It's kind of silly. Taser, Mace, and a Cattle Prod are the most lethal, except for the Nunchuck and the Chain. No, I'm sorry. No, they are the most lethal. The Cattle Prod and stuff is hilarious because the other drivers can't do anything. They just kind of sit on their bike and shake, Then there's also Nunchucks and Chains. There are a bunch of different bikes in the game. The Dumato, there's, let's see here, the Firecracker, the Rattler, the Razorback, And then the scooter, the first 4 I listed before the scooter, you get those, I think, by default. And then the scooter, of course, is unlocked. Then there's also the Hammerhead and Executioner. There's another word I can't say today. And they are extremely difficult. They fly up to 300 miles an hour. They turn sharp. You'll have to let off the gas a lot if you want to actually play the game and not go flying off the road. But they look cool as heck, too. So, on to the people that made this great game. Gabriel Jones produced it. He was the director of development on Dragon Age Origins as well. This is what he's been doing lately. Producer on Aquaman Battle for Atlantis. I guess that's a pretty bad game. And a senior producer on D&D Dragon Shard, which was a fun RTS from, at least I thought it was fun, published by Atari. Eric Van Roo was the lead tester for the game. He's also a producer on UFC Sudden Impact in 2004 and a lead tester on Star Wars Obi-Wan's Adventures and Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. John Grigsby was one of the producers of this game. He also produced T-Mech and designed MX 2002 and MX Superfly. The other programmer was Leif Terry, and Leif also programmed MX 2002 and MX Superfly. On emulation, this game runs great on Project 64, on my tower, on the compute stick. I even tried it on the phone, but it runs great with no issues, no graphical glitches that I could find. For purchasing this game on Amazon, it's around $23.40 plus shipping as of this episode. And on eBay, I saw them starting around $24.99 with free shipping and on up on pricing. So here's my closing thoughts on this game. And this is what I wrote on my outline that I read from. I just wrote, turn on the cheats, sit down with some buddies or by yourself and have a blast playing this one. And that's the truth. It may not look the best, but it certainly does play the best. It is a fun game in my book. I had never, honest to God, tried it before this episode. I sat down and I was like, I want to review Road Rash because I was in the mood to play some Road Rash. And I found myself laughing to myself while I was sitting here playing it. So it's a lot of fun. You just got to give it a little bit of time. I would like to try it sometime with up to 4 people, taking your friends and hitting them over the head. It'd be like an adult version of Mario Kart, I guess. Not that Mario Kart's bad, but I guess a more adult version of Mario Kart. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. You're going to have a fun time playing this. I'd say emulate it. If you really want to buy it, go out and buy it or flash card it or something. But just try this game out. Try it out. I think you will like it. It took me a couple of races before I actually got into the groove of it. And then I couldn't wait to start hammering everyone in the face with my tire iron. And so, yeah, that's it. I hope everyone liked the episode. And don't worry, we're going to touch more on emulation in future episodes. As time goes on, emulation's just going to get better, I believe anyways. So if you want to find us, the website is n64podcast.com, n64podcast.com, of course. You can get us on Facebook, and that is facebook.com/n64podcast. You can tweet. Our Twitter is at the N64podcast. And, of course, you can email us, show@n64podcast.com. The N64 Podcast is on Google Play Music and iTunes. Give us a good review if you don't mind. That helps us out tremendously. You can also catch the YouTube version of the show at youtube.com/AndyVGR. I also post from time to time, of course, my own personal pickups and stuff on social media, and my personal Twitter handle is at AndyVGR. And on there, it's a mixed bag of what I'll post. I want to thanks again for my wife for, once again, encouraging me to do this and giving me the time to do this, and so I can pursue this fun hobby that I've been having an absolute blast doing. I hope everyone has a happy Easter or had a happy Easter, depending on the time that you're listening to this, or Passover, or whatever you're doing. Just have a good time at it. It's the weekend, people, so let's enjoy it. The show's theme song is Techno Axe's Edge of Tomorrow. And last but not least, I just want to say good gaming, everybody.